So we are really at the cutting edge with this diet approach. FGF-21, it ramps up metabolism. This is why you're getting the crazy energy.
I don't want to sit here and try to give a message to the masses and say you can eat cereal and candy. However, you kind of can.
I live on caffeine. I'm a coffee connoisseur. I love it. I came off caffeine cold turkey. I had too much energy, so something had to give. When you go beyond like the 6, 7, 8 days and longer, you start to lose interest in food. Some people are probably biting at you a little bit because they probably see there's a new trend coming and they're going to get hit directly in the pocket. It's nice to speak to you, Mark. It feels like it's been all of an hour and a half.
Right.
How are you? You good?
I'm doing good, man. You had a big ass treadmill just delivered to my house, so I was coming from that. Your haircut looks good, man. I'm glad you got a haircut for the show.
I had a shave and a haircut, especially for you, Mark.
That's important.
Unless I've got a special occasion, I'm somewhat of a recluse, and the hair grows until it's time.
All right, man.
To go and do something.
Let's dive into all this sugar fasting and stuff. It's a new thing, right? Sugar fasting. It came out of nowhere just a couple months ago, and everyone's starting to do it, right? It's brand new.
Yeah. I was just saying to Ryan, it's surprising how this has caught fire. It does very much remind me of carnivore, and before that keto, because keto kind of got a second wind like a year before carnivore, maybe 2 years before carnivore, when everyone jumped on. So it's just funny to watch these trends come, but to be at the front end of them and actually putting information out, the things that you've been experimenting with over the years, it's interesting, but in the same sense, it's very frustrating to see a lot of the false information being put out by so many people who profess to be experts in a field that are putting out information that's incorrect, just to try and get something out, as opposed to doing a full analysis and actually trying it. Because unless you've actually tried this, I don't feel you should really be commenting on it, because it defies all logic that we've been told.
You did a candy, you did straight candy for months on end, right?
Like, yeah, I've done it multiple times, but 2022 was the first time. Yeah, and obviously now I know more of the interplay of what's going on and the physiology behind it. I mean, I was saying to Ryan, I experiment with everything, and I don't really put a lot of information out until I've been through the full gambit. I have a really strong set of ethics and a moral code that I wouldn't put something out there unless I felt comfortable in other people doing it and being able to recommend where the parameters are. And I feel with this, I've done enough experimentation over the years. I mean, I've done fruitarian, I've done banana fasts, I've done just candy, I've done just vegan, I've done heavy protein restriction in a keto setting. So I can compare all of these. I know how it feels. Because some things, the things we'll touch on later on that have not been mentioned, I've only found because there's things that are happening in my body and things that I'm feeling that have not yet been explained. And there's got to be a reason for that. Because the body is not giving it signals, symptomology or signals without a reason. And there's got to be something that's activating it, and there's got to be a mechanism of action at play. So it's just continuously digging. Why?
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about specifics of a sugar fast. And you're saying that you think that there's maybe some misinformation out there because it extended from one YouTuber to another YouTuber to another YouTuber, and now it's chaos going on out there, and people might be doing some things that maybe aren't great on a sugar fast. Like, in your view, what's an effective way for someone to utilize sugar fasting for specifically fat loss and weight loss?
It's always going to be contextual, and that's something that I want to make really clear to people watching, that when you're intaking information or even reading a study is that you apply the context in which that information is being presented to you. So if we're talking about someone who just wants aggressive fat loss and they're very, very much overweight, then to start out, I would recommend mainly just fruit to get them used to it, because if you just go straight energy dense sugar, like straight sugar, and mainline it, if you're coming from a low carbohydrate background and you're not super active, you might have some deleterious effects from that. Like me and Brian were just talking about how hyperactive we are, which is an awesome side effect, but that might not be great if you've got an office job, because you'll be climbing the walls, you know, like I have been the past few weeks. So I think the big thing that I want to touch on in this is not the setup, not the foods too much, because there's enough out there. We know you've got to have a fructose heavy diet, you've got to put stress on the liver, and FGF-21's being talked about, and that's, you know, the one known hormone at play. It ramps up metabolism. This is why you're getting the crazy energy. And then, but over time, and this is where I didn't intend to talk about this early in the podcast, but this is where I needed explanations for things that I was feeling. Because going on a sugar fast, if you're in tune with your body, is very much like going on a journey. And doing it repeatedly for prolonged periods, which I don't know anyone doing that for a prolonged period, like continuously. I mean, some of the vegans, Durian Rider, maybe, you know, but he incorporates vegetables and starches and things. But if you're just doing straight sugar, you have increased energy, and what we know about that. One of the cool side effects of that was I'm a coffee whore. Like anyone who's followed me for years, like I live on caffeine. I'm a coffee connoisseur. I love it. I mean, I'll go through at the peak like 12, 16 cups a day, especially on the road, like when you're driving or whatever. It's just like I came off caffeine cold turkey because it was too much. I had too much energy, so something had to give. So I had no headaches, no withdrawal symptoms, which I've had before coming off caffeine. So this was really a great hack just to get me off the reliance of caffeine. But as you go through this journey, and this is what we've discussed a little bit privately about the 2 to 3 days, and most people doing it. If you do it for much longer, the energy does start to drop off. Like all of the effects that I say they're probably most amplified around day 2 and day 3, where you probably got the most amount of energy. You're probably going to get like the maximum rate of fat loss, not cumulative, but the rate of fat loss I would hypothesize is between 2 and 3 days. That's when it's at most heightened state. But what I would find, and actually in my book, I recommend anywhere between 2 and 7 days, and the sweet spot being 2 to 3 days. But when you go beyond like the 6, 7, 8 days and longer, you start to lose interest in food. You don't really want to eat. And that was something that there's got to be an explanation for this. And I spoke to Anabology about this because we've actually been friends for a little while now. So we've been communicating for quite a good period of time. Super, super great guy on all levels, like intelligent, but just a really good human being. And he just wants to have good information. So I was wondering if there was downregulation of FGF-21 stimulation, some form of negative feedback loop. Well, turns out that there's another hormone at play. And I'm just updated the copy of the book, so everyone who's got the old book will be getting the updated version. There's about 20 new pages. And there's something called growth differentiation factor 15 becomes stimulated, GDF-15. So what this is, It actually occurs in the brain. So your tissues, specifically in this context, liver more so, will put out this hormone GDF-15. It can also be secreted from other peripheral tissues. And you will have felt this, Mark, and any athlete will. Because if you're slightly hungry and you go and do a bout of intense exercise, you are not hungry after that. It blunts your appetite. That's growth differentiation factor 15 up there from being secreted from the muscle tissue. And the hindbrain, which is part of the brain that it can sense hormones, doesn't need to cross the blood-brain barrier. It tells the body it sends out a signal, don't eat. It doesn't want you to eat. And I was like, well, this explains exactly what I've been feeling for doing it for a prolonged period. So when I went months of doing just candy, and a lot of people probably question that, people close to me will know me because they saw me eating nothing but candy. I mean, I can send you the receipts. I would walk into a gas station, spend $200, and at that time I was pretending that it was for Halloween or a kid's birthday party because I was so embarrassed. Like, yeah, it's not all for me. But the GDF-15 is down regulating it. So this is the body's compensatory mechanism for FGF-15. So it preserves it. Sorry, this is a way of it preserving muscle tissue and wasting away. So you get the elevation. If I kind of do it with my hands on a graph. So when you stimulate FGF, you get this spike with fructose. It's rapid. You also get an increase in AMPK, activated protein kinase. Again, no one's mentioned this being at play either. So we've got these two things at play, and then GDF-15, it's a real slow burn, gradually increasing over days. So you get the AMPK activation, the FGF activation, and with AMPK you get increased fat oxidation, increased glucose, you get the autophagy. We're all familiar with it, but it's only normally present when you're conventionally fasting. This seems to be another hack where you can have AMPK activated at the same time as being in a fed state. So in the short term, AMPK is there to help you preserve lean muscle. But the longer you go, like, you will start to become catabolic. So you've kind of got this yin and yang at play where you've got that grace period where you're not going to lose muscle. And then when you feel GDF-15 kicking because you don't want to eat, that's when you really should drop and stop. But if you've got a ton of weight, it's like a nature's GLP, not the same pathway. However, I did some digging because I'm like, I've never heard people talking about this. So I had a look, and Eli Lilly and one of the pharmaceutical, I think they've just gone, one's in stage 1, the other one's in stage 2, in developing GDF-15 or an analog of this to stimulate it. And one of the companies has put it into a GLP. So you're going to get more appetite suppression from a different pathway. So we are really at the cutting edge with this diet approach. So if you want to go a little bit further and extend it, and this is why I could sustain the candy diet and why candy was actually the best choice for me, because I had such an aversion for food and I still needed to get energy in to preserve lean muscle tissue. So it allowed me to stay on. If I was relying on fruit, I mean, honestly, a handful of candy, I'm done. I was done. And I've just felt this all over again because I went and did blood work before because I went back to a carnivore style diet, which for a couple of weeks. And that was kind of to test out how my pancreas was, which is another story as well. So autoimmune history, I had a little stress on the pancreas a year ago. Lipase enzymes get elevated. So I wanted to go on a higher fat diet to see if that problem had been solved. And it came back with elevated lipase enzymes. So I was like, okay, we can't use that diet style. So let me jump back on to refresh my memory. So I've actually been, what is it? It's been two weeks. So I will probably stop on Friday, get blood work, and then see the difference. So you'll be able to see like 16 days of a sugar fast and then what impact it's had on the pancreas. But yeah, it's the body's very, very smart. And anyone who has worked with me or seen any of my content about diet, something's always going to be good until it's not. And I've never seen a diet be good in perpetuity. Like Joel Green, friend of both of ours, I've spoken to him for a long time, but I think he's pretty much off the same hymn sheet. Everyone gets excited about something. It's working until it isn't. And I hypothesize that like some of these people might be seeing their weight loss stop because they're carrying on with longer fasts, and they're just not, they're down-regulating their metabolism. And if they're coming from a place that was already compromised because they've been dieting, which is what we spoke about, is a sugar fast good for people on GLPs? Yes and no. It's depending on if they've been on GLP for a long time and they've heavily restricted calories, or say they're on 1,000 calories a day. And for anyone, all the calorie haters, we all recognize calories as a way of explaining energy. So don't start with all that bull. It's like, it's something we all use as a measure. So for the sake of this podcast, we're going to talk about calories. Like, we all know the arguments are for and against them, but it's something that we all use as a measure, and it's generally accepted as a measure. So if you're coming from that low calorie state and you're going through this, you can have that 2-3 day grace period, but then you're going to be back down to this baseline again. And if you're carrying that on, you are not recovering your metabolism. So that's where a real short burst of 2 to 3 days and then resetting with protein essential fatty acids for 1 or 2 days, and then you flip back. So these shorter bursts, which are great for repairing metabolism, reverse dieting, that's a great application for a sugar fast. If someone's got a shed ton of weight to lose and they want to do a prolonged one, you know what's going to happen. You're going to elevation, then it's going to drop off. So you might just want to carry on going and going for a longer period. Wouldn't specifically recommend it because you might run into deficiencies, but B vitamins get mentioned a lot, which are beneficial. However, in a setting of a sugar fast, that first 2 to 3 days, I'd maybe say to not bother. I don't think you're not going to come deficient in 2 to 3 days. And some of these mechanisms are sensing for deficiency, or not for deficiencies, but a shortage, or there's not enough there. So we know B vitamins are used to create energy. So when it's sensing, it actually amplifies that stress response. So you've got stress response from protein restriction, stress response on a mitochondrial level, and potentially from a shortage of B vitamins and other essential micronutrients, all creating this like cascade effect to allow AMP, K, FGF to be activated and really give you that aggressive fat loss for 2 to 3 days. So I think this gives everyone who's trying it a real chance to judge their own physiology, because as soon as you start to get that slight aversion to food, I feel nauseous. Like you can't ignore it. So that's your sign to say stop, reset, and repeat. You still got weight to lose.
It's exciting too. Like when you follow that protocol, I sent you over the Smelly Protocol and you started laughing and you're like, shit, dude, you're like, that's exactly what I would recommend to people after doing the diet for a long time. It just, for myself, in a short period of time of doing the diet and just researching some stuff and being in contact with you, I was like, well, it does sound like it really makes some sense to potentially break this up a little bit. And I know that people get concerned when you start to give anybody freedom with a diet, then there's a lot of concern because you're like, well, shit, I don't want them to, go haywire and overeat and so forth. And same thing when it comes to talking about candy, like we're not sitting here saying like just blast tons and tons of candy. Although there is a little bit of research that I sent you a study too recently where they did a study for 5 weeks, and the group that had the lowest amount of protein, they continually were giving them a little bit more calories, and they found this kind of discrepancy of nearly 700 calories extra being burned by the group that didn't have protein because potentially, again, of FGF-21 and maybe of the other hormone that you were mentioning. And so we always want to be careful with the recommendations that we give. But does FGF-21 get like spiked, or does it get enhanced additionally from not consuming protein and the fructose or fruit or?
Yeah, I believe so. I believe that you get a FGF response just from protein restriction. I believe that why it's so vitally important that we're getting such an amplified response is because of the stress on the liver from the fructose or from some MCT.
Let's talk about MCT. What do you mean by MCT? I thought we couldn't have any fat. Stop the presses here. We could have some fat in the diet, maybe?
All fat's bad. All fat's bad. All protein's bad. And if you do carnivore, all carbs will kill you. I mean, that's just common sense, Mark. I mean, you're doing a diet, you've got to vilify something.
We're on carbs.
Yeah, MCT is metabolized very differently. It's immediately going to end up with it going through into the liver. I don't see a massive. The only reason not to use it is if you use too much of it and get a GI response. Yeah, GI response. And if you do, you know what I'm talking about. I wouldn't recommend going above like 10 grams until like in one sitting. But I don't recommend a lot of MCT anyway. There's definitely applications for it. As I say, we're already supercharged anyway with the fructose. But if you do really want a ridiculous pre-workout, then grab some coffee, put some MCT in there, and a little bit of honey or some agave.
Let's see if we can dispel a couple like myths and some areas where people are off. And we'll get back to the FGF-21 and the fructose thing for a second. But, joint health is a concern when fat is eliminated from the diet. There's also a concern of fat-soluble vitamins. And I've been speculating, and there's also a concern over hormones. But I've been speculating that when you're on these particular diets, or when you're basically on any diet and you have body fat to get rid of, that that body fat is a little bit similar to supplemental fat or dietary fat. Am I correct in saying that, or am I way off with that statement?
Thought process is there, but I don't think that it's going to help with like helping deliver fat-soluble vitamins. I would take those. As I said, like I won't even worry too much if you're doing a 3-day sugar fast about like B vitamins and water-soluble vitamins, because you're going to get that stress response. So, but I mean, if you're the other vitamins and both of the vitamins, do them on the reset day. Have them when you're consuming some fat. No one here is saying do not eat protein and do not eat dietary fat. You're just going to have these short periods that you're going to use as a tool to lose body fat, recover metabolism. I think this is going to be an absolutely amazing tool for people reverse dieting who have already, or they've just been doing a bunch of diets and absolutely tanked their metabolism. I think this is going to give you like 3-4 days, ramp it back up, have a couple of days off, replenish micronutrients, get some essential fatty acids, get some goodness back into your body, and you can rinse and repeat. I don't see it being an issue. I think it's carrying theory to the extremes. It doesn't happen. So I mean, you've not consumed protein for 3-4 days. Have all your muscles dropped off? I don't think mine did.
What about some of the people that you work with that are natural? Because you and I, we like bodybuilding and we like muscles, so maybe we're not super natural.
So we're all natty until someone does a video on us, right?
That's right. What have you seen from like clients that are natural that you work with, if you do work with anybody that's natural? Are they losing muscle if they try something like sugar fasting?
I haven't done anything extended, and I wouldn't recommend anything extended. As I say, the only way that I would potentially do that is if someone's really obese. Maybe some of like Cole's guys you could do an extended fast for, where it doesn't really matter. But you've always got to like have your finger on the pulse in what's going on with the body. You can't just flatline something forever. You know, like what we've talked about, and all my content is creating these windows of opportunity for the body to respond. You know, it's the same with the bodybuilding prep. It's the same with anything. You know, it's your body will respond until it stops, and you want to be ahead of the curve. You know, so you make adjustments that are going to allow you to facilitate the response that you want again later on. I just think that everyone's not too patient, and they just want to flatline their way there. It's like this might take you a little longer, but you're going to have continuous success, and you're not going to hit stalls or breaking points, and you're going to be in better health as well. You're going to be more balanced. You know, this is great for having a social life as well. So every diet I do, the first question is like whoever I'm working with. I don't really work with anyone anymore. I ain't got time, so I pass them on to other people. But it's like, so what's important to you? Like, what period of the week's important to you? Do you have date night with the wife? Do you have your kids at the weekend? Like, when do you need that break to have some freedom that's going to allow you to have a sustainable nutrition plan that coincides with your lifestyle, not vice versa, where someone's dictating a very rigid plan, and adherence is going to be good for a few weeks, and then it's all over again. You're back to the drawing board looking for something else to do.
Let's break a couple things down here with FGF-21
I
and
do want to touch on something with a fat as well while we're on that point.
yeah.
I think anabology, there is like a list of fats that are going to give like not an FGF response like MCT, but are going to put less of a stall on it. And he said about stearic acid being at the low end, and that's 100% correct. But like I recommend in some cases, a couple of grams might not be too bad, especially with your protein at night if you're breaking it up in anabology's model, which is a sustainable model, which I want to talk about the differentiation between the two, because my book walks you from originally it started out with, this is for my audience looking to gain, sorry, not looking to hold muscle and stay lean. It was a lifestyle. So now I've kind of walked you through, this is how you get to a sugar fast, remove, you get here, and then I walk you back all the way to a maintenance diet, all the way to a lean muscle gain, and to the point where you're looking to gain muscle. At that point, you're not doing something that's going to stimulate FGF because your protein intake's too much. But stearic acid in small amounts, maybe even a gram, you get a fusion of mitochondria and upregulation again of metabolism slightly. So it's just another pathway that you might be able to hit on to increase the efficacious nature.
What has stearic acid in it? Like
Cacao butter is probably the highest. I think that's about 35%.
could you have like a little bit of chocolate maybe? Like
Yeah,
like
I have it in the book.
yeah, okay.
A couple of squares of
Got a little
90%
tiny
dark chocolate
bar.
before bed.
There we
Yeah,
go.
it's a viable option. So it's like, and that I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater with this, because again, this is where the information really gets corrupted. Starches and a little bit of dietary fat ain't gonna break this. You know, starches don't inhibit FGF if that's what you're looking to do. Protein restriction is what drives FGF. Fructose is what pours fuel on the fire. I see starch has been pretty negative, and that's why with some people I'll recommend it to, because in like Ryan's case and my case, and I've got, well, sometimes you're just too jittery. So by having a little bit of starch, let's just say 30% starch and the rest from sugars, is just enough to even you out and hold you. And I think actually you even asked me about starch on one of the messages you sent me. And you're like, it feels different. It does. It sticks and it goes straight. It's muscle glycogen. It's very different to this sugar.
Well, and
And
it
I
could
laugh
be,
because, like, I know you're in tune with your body, and that's what I like. When people are in tune with the body, you can trust biofeedback.
I think this gives like, this is awesome learning stuff like this because now, you know, everybody always wants to know whenever you give them diet information, the first thing they want to know is can they have their favorite insert, you know, quote unquote bad food. That's what people always want to know. And with this, there's been like a lot of questions about like cereal and stuff. And it's like, I don't want to sit here and try to give a message to the masses and say you can eat cereal and candy. However, you kind of can,
You can.
but we're going to need you to like have reservation. Like you need to be reasonable with it. And if we're going to do some of these things, well, the candy could be pre-workout and the cereal could be post-workout, right? Like there's some good opportunities post-workout to take advantage of what's going on in the body because
Yeah.
we need insulin for the starch, right?
Yeah, post workout, you've got GLUT4 activation. So it's literally just going to suck up all that glucose converted from the starch straight into the muscle cells. That's why I like it post workout for anyone who's training hard with a good level. You know, it's just going to suck everything up.
I had this
So
question
whether you want
today.
to incorporate it in a sugar fast, I mean, as I say, like the book that I've put out, it walks you through those steps. So like I'll include collagen. So going from a sugar fast and you want to kind of walk it back, like the first step will be like post workout, I might add a little bit of collagen. Second step will be maybe add your protein feeding before bed. Then you add your starch post workout. I'm literally baby stepping you one by one to like maintenance, to main gain, like, and then you can choose like on which day you want to do which in your journey. It's like, I mean, that's why the book was very difficult because you have all this information. And it's like, okay, I didn't want to start with putting out just candy because immediately you're going to get attacked and it was way too extreme because none of the sugar fasting stuff was out there at this point. So it's like, I need something that's going to be sustainable that people do not need to cycle, you know? So it's like, and then you can bolt on things. My idea was to drip feed it afterwards, but I didn't expect it to go as bonkers as it has done this last 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah, you know, I had the question earlier today. Somebody was asking about if they do like endurance stuff, and then what they would have, you know, if they got when they got done with their workout. And I was basically telling them, I think because they were getting done with their workout a little bit later on in the day, I was like, that's a perfect opportunity for your starch and your protein. And this
Yeah.
was a person that doesn't even really need to lose weight, and so I was like, you could do this every day. In addition to, you know, probably just having starch period post workout, even if you work out in the morning, because I already knew what you just said, that it doesn't interrupt FGF-21. It doesn't kind of throw us out of this diet if that's the thing that we're kind of hanging our hat on.
Yeah, if you're a performance athlete, then 100%, I think the starch post workout. But I would include a little bit of fructose in there. You know, I think I told you to do the. All right, I'm going to tell all of you to do this. I'm deadly serious.
I did
Chocolate
something very
frosted
similar. So
flakes. Chocolate frosted
I
flakes
have
with
the
jasmine
chocolate.
rice.
Yeah, I have the chocolate frosted flakes now, so I'm locked and loaded. Like I
Oh,
had frosted flakes and sugar, super golden crisp with some rice, and we filmed it with some protein on it, and it was absolutely amazing. It was
I
incredible.
don't know where you got the protein from. I didn't say put a protein shake on.
Yeah, yeah, you got to. So I threw like vanilla hydrolyzed whey protein on there because I was breaking the sugar fast at that time. So
Okay, cool.
that
Yeah, I mean, like the frosted flakes give you that sugar as well. You know, so that's a perfect time to implement something like that. I wouldn't recommend it any other point of a sugar fast, you know, but if you're training hard, why
what
not
about
utilize that window of opportunity that you've just created?
what about for someone who's like 20% body fat? Like, should they be using strategies like that, or should they are they too fat to
I don't
to
know,
do that?
20% is not overly high when you look at like
Correct.
the public. You know, for me, 20% in striking distance of being in shape. So I'd be pretty confident, you know, in 6 to 8 weeks, I'm in really good shape.
So 20 to 25%, you think like maybe that's
I
that.
would probably be rotating them through sugar fasts and for 2 or 3 days, and then you know protein and fat days.
I like that.
Pretty
Yeah.
much, it's all about it's all. it's all about those like rotations, making sure the body's got all the micronutrients it needs, say across a period of time, making sure that all fuel substrates are being accepted by the body, and you can prime it for whatever you want after that. So if you want to do it, so for example, if I give you a 2 day sugar fast and then I give you 2 days of protein and fat, then if you're still training on those 2 days with protein and fat, you're probably going to deplete a good amount of muscle glycogen to where your next sugar fast can probably be 3 days or even 4 days, to that point where you're like turning off the hunger signals because you're created that small deficit from being glycogen depleted to top up that's going to buy you maybe an extra day, you know? And that's something as well that I think we should touch on as well. It really frustrates me. And I want this diet style to be successful. You can out eat this diet. And I know like Dorian Ryder, when he was with Freely, I'm going back like 10, 15 years now, it would just be like, eat, 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 eat. And then you get people complaining to get fat. Like de novo lipogenesis exists. And you can quote whatever studies, but if you look at many of these studies, it's done over such a short window of time. It isn't giving it time to upregulate de novo lipogenesis. You know, or they might be coming from a plate where they've already emptied their glycogen stores. So you're going to get their hepatic glycogen stores filled and their muscle glycogen filled. And if it's a 5 day or a week's worth of an experiment, you're probably 2 days there just topping up glycogen before you even start upregulating these pathways to burn off the extra fuel taken. So it's like, I gained fat doing this. Do not eat unlimited. Like, you can. It takes some doing, but you can definitely do it. There's no diet where you can just eat unlimited, unlimited, unlimited. You might have satiety signals that'll kick in and make it difficult, but hell, I'm pretty confident that I know that I can eat through it, and I'm pretty confident you could too.
You bring up a great point too, because a lot of people are coming in with like a busted up metabolism. And so it's going to take them a little bit of time for them to get used to the diet, for one. I do think it's a good idea, and maybe you disagree. It would be interesting to hear your thoughts on this. Almost every single time I recommend any dietary intervention, I say, hey, really don't worry too much about the amount of food you're consuming. And that's hard for people to do because they're not patient. And I'll say, I don't even really necessarily want to focus specifically on like weight loss in week 1 and maybe not even week 2. Like, let's just have you get used to this style of eating. And then we'll talk about the sucky stuff of you probably having to reduce, potentially reduce the amount of food that you're consuming. Do you kind of agree with that technique?
Yeah, I mean, I recommend in the book the safest way to do it is really to do your best the first time you do it and the first few days, just to really focus on whole fruit, actual food, and then judge it at the end of your fast, and then you can make those adjustments. Like, oh, I lost like way too much weight, or it's like, because things can happen too quick. Not many people admit that, but it's like, okay, well, maybe I need something a little bit more energy dense. So let me maybe have a handful of candy, let me add some sugar to the fruit. But it might go the other way. If you eat too much energy dense things, the easiest thing is then just start reversing and adding more fruit. Because some people, the volume is a problem of eating so much fruit. It's not so much like the energy density and getting to it's a physical stomach space for some people. And a lot of the stuff that I've seen from these people who are trying the diet is, and yeah, I actually one account today that I think I commented on to you and mentioned, it's like making out that this is great. It's calorie restricting. It's like, oh, I've eaten so much unlimited. And then when you add it up, it's like fucking 800 calories. Well, no shit. It's just like, yeah, of course you're losing weight. It's just frustrating, man. So I think that's a really good message, not to restrict, but just make sure that people focus on getting quality of food and mainly fruit for that first period, and then make your adjustments from there.
It's so hard to communicate because people eat so differently, from one person to another. The interpretation is wild, but people can have collagen on this diet too. Why is collagen a good fit?
If you look at the amino acid profile of collagen, it's really, really low in all branched chain amino acids. Isoleucine is really low. I think I did send you it a few weeks ago when you were asking. I think it's like 0.3 grams per 100 grams or something like that. It's super, super low. And obviously that's where the real benefits come from, is isoleucine. But when you do look at the studies, like overall protein consumption, I forget the study, but I think at 10% you didn't really get any FGF activation. Around 8% you'd start to see it. You get more of the strong, like a response that you'd probably noteworthy for weight loss was around 6. And then the closer to 0, it just gets better. So in
And
the
you're
book,
talking
I
about
always just say,
protein.
as a caveat, just as a guide, like don't go above 5% protein for the diet on a sugar fast.
Right. Yeah, that's super interesting to know. And that could be, I mean, I think that's exactly how people end up landing on this diet is like, okay, if you don't consume protein, you're going to produce more FGF1, but then you're like, well, what the hell do I eat? Right.
Yeah.
And we know that, fat can turn into fat a little easier, but it seems like on this diet, you could probably play around with having some fat, but we need some carbohydrates and we need a good energy source. And so it seems like fructose and simple sugars are a good idea. But now you're bringing up some really great points. And it's like, well, it seems like a percentage of some starch, especially on training days, could be thrown into the mix a little bit too.
Yeah, especially that post-workout window is when I'd probably only recommend it if you're going through the sugar fast. But when I'm transitioning people through to more of a stay lean or build lean muscle, I mean, we'll do starch post-workout with collagen and maybe a little leucine, which will activate mTOR, which you would think would downregulate certain pathways. AMPK gets downregulated when mTOR's activated, but we're talking about an amount of leucine, like 3 grams. I expect that to be somewhat transient versus having a bolus dose of 40 or 50 grams of protein. Plus, you're not looking to lose weight in that context. I feel confident in putting it in there. It's not going to have any like negative effects. The whole goal of that is to retain lean muscle. So have you starch, collagen, some leucine, and fructose. It's very important if you're going to do that protocol that I've got in there post-workout that you do have some fructose with that to try and like override or at least neutralize like leucine slightly. And then before bed is the protein bolus. It's the safest. I think anabology deserves a lot of credit for not just putting out the easy thing, which would have been straight sugar fasting and glorify it and try and make an ebook and make some quick money by going viral. He did what I tried to do and have done. It's put something out that's very responsible, but explains, so it's like you don't have to worry about taking a break from anabology strategy because you're getting that break. It's like almost like you're doing a 12-hour fast, with sugar, and then it's like you eat your protein, then sleep it off during the night. So his protocol is, I think it's really good. You can flip
Yeah.
flop between that and sugar fasts, like
Yeah.
really easy. And obviously mine was targeted more towards performance and athletes because there is applications for it.
Anabology's protocol, for people that don't know, it's basically a sugar fast throughout the day. And then in the evening, you break the sugar fast with a lean source of meat and a starch. And there's a lot of things to think about with that lean source of meat because depending on goals and depending on where you're at, depending on body fat percentage and stuff, like the meat doesn't have to be super lean all the time. But like, so for my goals, what I'm trying to do right now, I'm just going to keep it super lean for a while, but there'll be a time where I bring up the fats again. There's going to be a time where I'll have specific days where I actually eat like 100 grams of fat. But it's been a while. I've been keeping my fats, very low. They've been under 30 for a while. I don't feel anything negative from it. But as we're pointing out here today, when you do something you start to do something for a long time, months on end, a year, and a long time could mean something different to each person as well. When you start to do something for whatever a long time means to you, your luck eventually runs out. And then you got to try to figure out something. And you and I are 100% agreement with this, yes, because you mentioned, in a message to me yesterday, I always say it's a mistake to try to science the human body. And you said yesterday, look, we'll never outsmart the human body. Like, it's just every time we try to get it to do something, it's like sometimes you get it halfway there and you're like, I got it. And then you get a little further and then it's like, nope, just all of a sudden, all the opposite happens. Somehow something that you did either made you dehydrated, or it made you hold water, or it made you negatively impacted your sleep, or it caused some crazy stress response. And all of a sudden you look way different than you did 3 or 4 days ago. Like 3 or 4 days ago, you felt and looked shredded. And then, a handful of days later, there you are, like feeling fat and questioning literally everything that you're doing at that point. You're not losing your mind. You probably did gain a little bit of weight. Something probably did happen, because the body is very intelligent and it's not going to allow you to really like rob it of energy all the time.
Yeah, and like I said, the perfect example is I wouldn't have come across GDF-15 or the MPK activation. I don't think anyone's mentioned either of those doing this diet if I haven't done it extensively and couldn't explain something I was feeling in the body. This is where, bro science and practical application should always lead science, So to merely dismiss something is very closed mind, and I don't really have much time or much respect for people who are unwilling to listen and maybe even try themselves, just to dismiss something out of hand when you have no real understanding of what the actual applications, mechanisms of action, and what's going on. Like, you have no right to do that. Don't speak on a topic that you have no experience with. Very frustrating.
Yeah.
But just going back to the thing with the weight as well, Mark, because this is another consideration. 'Cause I know you've got a lot of people who are focused on weight loss, and depending on what you eat, if you're doing the protocol, which most people are doing, having a little bit of meat at night and maybe some vegetables and starch, and then they get like a little bit frustrated. It's like, oh, I've not lost any weight, or I've put a pound on. Like, you just think about what you've eaten and what happens in the body when you've eaten that, It's like protein might not have completely broken down. You're definitely not going to pass it through, especially if you've had it like 2 hours before bed. The type of protein is going to have a massive effect. Whether you're having like a lean protein, egg whites, white fish, versus a fattier cut of beef, it's going to take much longer to digest. You're having vegetables with there that are fibrous in nature. That's going to draw water and hold water in the digestive tract. So there's so many different ways that weight can go off and have absolutely zero to do with anything regarding adipocytes. I just want to put that out there, because I know people are doing this and they're seeing, oh, I've stalled, or I've done this, or like, put it in context. Maybe don't take your weight that day. If you're going on a rotation where you're doing 2-3 day sugar fasts and you're having a day of protein and fat, then maybe you still take your weight at the end of a 3-day sugar fast that you've been consistent with, and use that as your gauge and your marker for your weight, and not get weighed again until you've gone through that cycle and your body's in the same physiological state, as opposed to weighing every day.
It makes sense to maybe avoid weighing yourself here and there, unless you're just trying to keep a log and trying to keep track for some particular reason. But if you're being honest with yourself, full well, you know exactly, you start to learn exactly what you weigh over a period of time, and full well when you're lighter. Like, it's not a complete surprise or complete shock when you look at the scale and it's 4 pounds heavier, or when you look at the scale and it's 4 pounds lighter. Usually you have some preconceived notion of, man, I've been rocking on this diet. Everything's been feeling really good. I'll probably get a little bit of a light reading. And sometimes you're wrong. And sometimes you are like up like 1 pound or something like that, but you're usually not off by a ton. I do want to say you have a lot of experience with dieting. I have a lot of experience with dieting. And I just want to make it very clear to people, like, when you do any diet protocol, there should be some sort of feel where you have like a pull on the body. Like, there's something kind of pulling, like literally pulling body fat off of you. And that is something that is, in my opinion, is unavoidable. You have to feel that. You don't have to feel like shit. You don't have to feel energy loss. but there has to be a feel and almost like a look, like you look in the mirror and your face is a little leaner. Your belly is a little flatter. You're ravenously hungry going into dinner. I think these are things that we need. Like, I think that that's fat burning. That hunger, it could be hunger, but I think that fat burning is it's really important to weight loss. And I'm not saying go around hungry all day either, but I think it's very normal to be pretty hungry going into dinner and stuff like that. So I just want to make that perfectly clear to people that because this is a weight loss strategy and it's a diet protocol, you're going to have to feel like you're dieting. You're not going to always feel full. You're not going to always feel satiated. You're not always going to feel satisfied, especially when you're eating these simple sugars all the time and you're not maybe getting some of the other flavors that you want. You'll start to crave meat and stuff like that, but it's all okay because meat is right around the corner. This diet is actually really interesting because it is a very well-balanced diet. If you were to look at it over the course of a few weeks, if you look at it in one day in isolation and you're like, sugar fast, what is this? The guy's eating candy and maple syrup all day. Like, it's weird. This is a weird program. Buddy the Elf diet, right? But it's not like that at all. There's fruit, there's vegetables, there's starch, there's lean sources of meat. And for me, this feels like the healthiest that I've ever eaten, which is wild because I've done so many different versions of diet. But this that I landed on, it feels fucking awesome. And I'm going to do some version of this for a very long time. And I might go keto like in the wintertime or something like that. Like, I might switch things up a little bit, but pulling back on the meat feels beneficial. And I'm having some friends reach out that are bodybuilders. Chase Irons actually was reaching out and he was saying that he can't believe, like, right away his stomach just feels different.
Yeah, this is something I wanted to just touch on with what you're saying as well. There's a big difference between fat loss and weight loss. And what you will notice, I mean, this is an actual a benefit that probably won't really occur to many people, but I think doing a sugar fast for a good period, and I maybe would make people go on that journey once and just go through it for a week. That's why I have it in there. I want people to experience that journey, to do 7 days straight and understand, because you might not be able to recognize satiety signals anymore. And this kind of hits a refresh on what you actually feel and gets you in tune with your body again. And they might experience a shed load of weight loss at the front, but you're losing a lot of inflammation. You might lose a couple of inches off your waist and then it might not drop anymore. But the food volume, like the junk from your digestive tract, all that extra fluid, it's all coming away and it's only going to come away once. So people get like disheartened. It's like there's a difference between fat loss and weight loss, and fat loss can only happen at a certain rate. I think that's why you've seen a lot of people getting rapid weight loss drops initially, and then they're like, "Oh, I'm only losing half a pound a day." I'm like, "Yeah, you're probably losing generally like fat now, as opposed to before. You're losing water, junk out your digestive tract, inflammation. So I think it's important to mention these factors because they're often overlooked, and it's an explanation why the scale maybe isn't representative of what's truly going on."
You and I are completely crazy with this stuff. And we've been doing it for a long time. We obsess over it, really love it. But, speaking of something like inflammation, it's super interesting. In my bathroom, I have what I call a back fat mirror. I have a mirror that's like behind me and kind of reflects, and you can see the backside of your body, which I recommend to everybody because it's important to see. It's important to see the whole picture, right? If you're trying to, have better body composition and stuff like that, it's great to see everything. But I noticed that my calves, like when my diet's on point and my rest is on point, and everything feels good. I feel fast. I feel light. I feel explosive. That my calves are completely shredded.
Yeah, you get those like stringy, those little things like strands showing, right? Yeah,
shredded veins, everything, right? But on a day that's just a little different, where I might be on my feet a little longer, maybe I went for a run, and maybe I wasn't on point as much with my food. Maybe
that's gravity doing its thing and pulling the water down and collecting around your ankles, dude. I mean, it's
and sleep is a huge factor there, right? And so these shifts that people are experiencing sometimes with their body weight, they can be massive within a day for who the hell knows why. Like, there's so many different reasons some of this stuff can happen. And you're even just mentioning gravity. Like it's all like a factor that you might not even be thinking about.
I mean, you work with like professional physique athletes for 20 years. I mean, and you actually pay attention to what's going on. You aren't just sending plans with goddamn numbers on it. Like, if you do it for 20 years, you're probably going to find the answer to most questions that the body can throw at you, you know? I really, you've had some really good people on there. I want to give a little bit of, I just want to give a mention to a couple of people as well, because there's a lot of people I would not recommend that people listen to, and it's just like all about money and clout. But when Anabology and you had Stan on, both very critical thinkers, both very open-minded, both will consult the literature and both have practical applications. And like, they're the type of people you need to be listening to and asking questions of and getting advice from. You know, so just be careful what information you consume and where it's coming from, because you're going to get lost in a world of YouTube otherwise.
Yeah, there's there's a lot of information out there right now, and I think for the most part it's fairly positive. Like, hopefully people give the sugar diet a chance, because I think that I think that this diet is going to be around for a long time. I think that, of course, like, it's going to die down, right? Like it's getting into mainstream, and who knows? Maybe I'll get on Joe Rogan and talk about it, and it will get 20 times bigger. But
Well, I mean, some of these pathways are like activate like AMPK and stuff. I mean, for the people doing fat fasting, like I used fat fasting for years intermittently,
wait,
which
what
is
is this
just
fat fasting? This is the complete opposite.
fat fasting is where you just consume nothing but fat. You're protein restricted, but you consume nothing but fat. So I would
That's
sometimes
hard,
use that
man.
on
You have to,
a.
like, eat a stick
uh,
of butter.
I would often go for like coffee and cream, and so it's just another useful tool, to have in your back pocket. So I've done a lot of keto over the years and a lot of low carb. Probably more. I'm pretty confident saying more extensively than 95% of the people out there. Probably 99 when it comes to using it with like professional bodybuilders and getting physique results with it. So like I was doing fat cycling and back in like 2010, 11, and 12, and it didn't take until I don't know when Ted Naiman brought out like the protein energy diet, but essentially it's that. And you can go back. I did a podcast with Sean Baker. I'm talking all about this when he first did the Carnivore Diet.
I saw that.
For getting body composition results by zigzagging your protein levels and zigzagging your fat levels. But like a fat fast, I mean, if you've got a desk job, you're sedentary, you get great cognition, very steady energy. And then it'll set you up. If you go pretty heavy on your fat, you're going to like ramp up the fat burning machinery. And then the next day you can drop it and do higher protein. The body's looking for body fat. Like, you can program anything to create these windows of opportunity. They're all tools. And the other reason I'm talking about this a little is to say, oh, he's the sugar guy, he's this guy, he's that guy. Like, we're all probably going to use these different tools at different times if we're open-minded enough, and they all should come into play, because anything that's just too extreme is not going to, eventually you're going to get some negative effects. I think that's the big message that I want to put out, and that a lot of these people who've been attacking you recently, and I take that kind of personally as well, because I class you as a friend, and it's a lot of the information I put out is the same, and they're not listening to what's being said. They're hearing a headline and running with it, as opposed to listening to the whole story. It's annoying. No
What's the
one's promoting
fallout?
anything extreme for a prolonged period.
Give us
Create windows of opportunity for the body to respond. I don't care what diet you're doing. This is always the way you're going to get results. You will never long-term outsmart the body. It will always look to seek and find homeostasis. If you can create those little windows to respond, do so as frequently as possible and cash in, and then go back to baseline. You'll always be able to go back to the well if you don't abuse it.
What's going to be the fallout potentially of people just trying to do this diet continuously and not breaking it and not really listening to maybe a couple of things we're communicating here today?
You'll end up with deficiencies. My cognition went down significantly. I got pretty bad brain fog. My existing neuropathy started to get a little bit worse. I had a little bit of a back injury years ago and lost most of the feeling in my feet and most of my legs. So I lost most of my leg size. My balance had been off. So like after a long period of just doing straight candy, which is why I would not recommend it. I mean, you eat straight candy for 4 months. Do you think it's going to be positive? Like, let's be honest. And I know that, but I'm always the guy to try and find out where that point is. Like, how long does it take, or what's the extreme to break it? Okay, never do that, and make sure no one else ever does that. It's like you're putting yourself forward to be the sacrificial lamb, right?
And you said, so let's talk a little bit more about cognition. And I think you mentioned something about the eyes before too. So let's talk about both these things. So cognition, somebody sent me a message, and by the way, thank you for everyone that's hitting me up on Instagram. I'm doing my best to try to answer a lot of the DMs. I'm spending a lot of time in there, and I appreciate, like, people are sending me studies and sending me information. And somebody that was a fruitarian for a long time, they shared with me, and they said, hey, just so you're aware, like, I've studied this space for a long time, and there's a lot of people that are fruitarian that literally lose their mind because the body is deteriorating. And okay, like, maybe some fruitarianism could be good for like a quick burst of like dropping some weight. But if we do this for a long period of time and we don't have those fat soluble vitamins, we don't have fat, we don't have
I
protein.
think it's fat, Mark. The brain's made up of mainly fat, and we've got essential fatty acids for a reason. So I think over time, I think John McDougall, you can clearly see he started to deteriorate over the latter years, like his speech, his clarity of thinking, he was getting a little bit more jumbled. And he did the starch solution. For anyone who doesn't know that, if you go and look at the starch solution, which is, similar to what we're talking about, but it's just starch in place of sugar and vegetables. So yeah, there are, like, I would start to get brain fog. Even I recorded a podcast on Friday with Anabology as well. And even on that one, you'll probably notice a remarkable difference from how I am today versus then, because I was at the point then of that sugar high, and it's too much. I can't think straight. I can't find my words. I'm mumbling. I'm stumbling. I'm getting frustrated with myself. So there's definitely ramifications from it. And vision. This isn't just me, actually. There's a female who noticed the same, because this was when I was doing candy for months on end. So I'd have like these, God. So I'd leave my gym bag sometimes open in the corner of the gym. But I must have left it open. You open it, I have all these like, do you get like the variety packs where they might have some like sugar coated French fries and a pizza and like a cheesecake? I think I put a picture on my story. So I had like 4 or 5 of these like trays that you slide out the cellophane. And like she walks, what the hell you got all that for? Like, I didn't know you had kids. I'm like, I don't. I'm like, this is my candy. She's like, you're not a bit old for candy. And I was like, no. And she was like, we got talking anyway. And she's like, I can't eat that stuff, because I noticed like the next day, if I have a lot of it, like my vision starts to get blurry. And over a period, that started to happen for me as well. And that was really, I was like, okay, like now I'm not really willing to go any further, because I'm not playing with that,
I
So,
mean, these are great things to be aware of. And
well, I know you get a lot of talk about like glycation and things. Like my A1C was still okay, but that's sticking to the blood. What else is this potentially sticking to that's not just the blood? It's like we can't measure everything. And even blood work, to an extent, it's like it's not telling you what's going on a cellular level. If you're resistant at a cellular level, then you're not probably uptaking it. I had really low iron and low ferritin at one point, and we did oral infusions, and like heavy, and no improvement. That's because I had a compromised gut. So it's like these don't even tell the whole story all of the time. That's why even blood work, it gives you an idea of what's going on, but we don't truly know what's going on a cellular level. And we don't know what's going on in the organs unless we go and have some imaging done. So
I
it's
got
not
to
like
say,
everyone's like put everything into context. It's like nothing's the the be all and the end all, you know?
I have to say for myself personally, getting blood work has been nice. It's a nice feature. It's nice to have that to look at to make sure, like, holy fuck, like hopefully I'm not going to die from some of the shit that I took in the past and stuff like that, right? But to be completely transparent and totally honest, there's never been like, there's not anything I've done with my blood work to where I shifted in a different direction and then all of a sudden I'm like, oh my God, I feel great. It hasn't been anything like that. It's actually been a little bit more like taking a supplement. Like a lot of supplements, you don't necessarily feel them. And Stan Efferding helped me with my blood work years ago. And I did have some pre-diabetes. I was friggin', 330 pounds. And, blood pressure was high. And Stan was explaining to me like, hey, man, blood pressure is high. Your blood is like motor
Sludge.
oil. It's thick and sludgy.
It's,
And like,
it's funny. I've got a funny story. I actually met the guy once who took Mariusz Pudzianowski's blood when he was at his peak, and they're like, we have no idea how he's still walking. It's just like, you could tell it's like syrup. It's like so thick, this
right,
blood.
right.
Holy shit, yeah.
Yeah. And so the blood work, it did help me with that intervention, but like with that intervention, I didn't even necessarily feel bad from that time. So it was precautionary, right? Like it gets me to set in a different direction. And I think that's what blood work does. Blood work's a snapshot of like where you're at now. And then you could progressively start to move in a different direction. But for some people, blood work could be huge because it could lead them to potentially get some hormone replacement therapy that could change their life, really. And we were talking about cognition with these diets, man. Talk about cognition when you're on testosterone. You take performance enhancing drugs. Like, I think it's a great motivator, and I think it can do a lot for your brain. It could do a lot for people that are entrepreneurs and people that are just trying to get a lot of work done in a given day.
Yeah, and I'm gonna go in for blood work probably on Friday if I can get in. But I'm gonna pull my historical from there as well because I think there was. I mean, I had a period where I was walking around with testosterone levels of 9 on my blood work, and I think it was around the time of doing the sugar diet. I didn't really see a ton of like muscle loss as well. So I'm just going to see if I'm going to try and piece together the blood work and then some photos and say cross-reference them back from 3 years ago. Because there was a point where I don't think I took any TRT for about 14, 15 months. Just, and I didn't really feel any difference except if I was in the gym. Things hurt a little bit more and you're not quite as steady. But other than that, I didn't really notice too much.
Some people have questions about whether this diet is for, people that are just super active and jacked, or do you think anyone can follow this type of diet protocol, especially maybe some of the information that you have in your book? I think your book's actually geared a little bit more towards athletes.
Well, so I mean, we're just putting I've updated the version. I did like 20 pages. So everyone who bought the book originally automatically gets sent another link. So that's for life as well. Like this, none of this is about. This is the first time I've even charged for any information, but the amount of of crap literally that I've been through learning all this stuff like personally, it's been at a personal expense. Like, so I thought, yeah, you know what, this time I will. I've put people through. I prepped one girl for like 3 years. Like she was ex-military and she was just a badass. She checks in every day at 5 a.m. for like 3 years. And even so I would get up if I was in the USA, she was in the UK and checking up. She got to the end. I didn't charge her. I gave her her money back. I'm like, you've been a pleasure to work with. Like, I don't think any of us are in this or doing this to make money. Mm-hmm. Well, some people probably are. I think that's probably some people who are probably biting at you a little bit because they probably see there's a new trend coming and they're going to get hit directly in the pocket for sure. But anyway, they're in it for the wrong reasons. And I know that we for sure are. So yeah, anyone who bought the book, they get free for life. If I update it, if we find out new stuff, then it's always going to be sent to them.
And is this diet for people that are like heavier too, or is it mainly, you think, just reserved for people that are like leaner?
Oh, sorry, again, back to your question. You have to rein me back in sometimes, man. I think it's for I think it can be used for everybody. I still recommend everybody tries it for those 7 days, because even if you don't continue it, I think for someone who's really overweight, I think it's still gonna teach you learn your body a little bit and teach you, recognize certain signals that you probably haven't for a long, long time, you know? And even if it's like the stomach shrinking, which, as Chase mentioned, I've mentioned, like a lot of people's stomach shrink. Well, if you do that for a week, what I've actually seen is that people's eating habits afterwards are a little bit better than they were prior. So I think cycling it in and out just for that, to get more in tune with your body. And if it shrinks your waist and your stomach for a little bit, like you physically can't eat as much for a couple of days after. So I think could be a good reset on many fronts, not just, you know, for aggressive weight loss. I think it might teach people who have not felt certain things in their body, like learn their body a little better, because it is that much of an extreme. You know, that journey, as I call it, like a 7-day, 10-day journey, is something I think everyone should experience.
Will this diet give people diabetes?
Only by day 3. It's like, dude, the whole diabetes thing. It's like we know this actually can recover. This isn't new. This can help reverse type 2 diabetes. And I ain't even gonna like. I'm gonna give props to the Mastering Diabetes guys. I've been about 5, 6 years ago. I became aware of them. 2 diabetics, and they do mainly fruit, and they repair people's diabetes following that protocol. So we know that the Randall cycle is really going to cause most of the issues when you have a decent amount of both fuels going at the same time. But even then, it comes down to energy balance. You have anything in a surplus for long enough, you're going to start to get metabolic dysfunction. It doesn't really matter what it is. Anything in abundance over time will cause metabolic dysfunction. Anything in a deficit is probably going to clear most of the health markers up. The leaner generally you get, unless you're potentially in the bodybuilding scene, the healthier you're going to be. You know, it's simple. I think we saw that from 2020. You know, people who had the worst outcomes from, I don't even know if we can say it now, but most of it was with people who have metabolic dysfunction of some type. And I think that if you get if you get everything in check and your BMI in check, you're going to be healthier. I don't think anyone who's doing any type of diet can argue that point.
Yeah, I like what you said earlier too. You know, people that are trying this out, and you're mentioning, hey, you know, give it a shot for 7 days. Do your best just to stick with fruit, you know, and don't make some crazy like sugar cocktail in the beginning. You know, like just take your time with it, learn your body, because you can knock the shit out of yourself with sugar. I mean, you can knock yourself silly. You could make yourself really feel like shit. You can make yourself really feel like crap. You could also make yourself feel like crap by trying to digest a ton of fruit. So even with that, like, don't just sit down and just eat like this giant variety of fruit. There is some information too from fruitarians about like mixing certain plants and things like
Yeah,
that.
the food combining. I mean, if you've done fruitarian, I did fruitarian for, I think it was just under a year, and that's when I ended up doing it wasn't extreme enough for me. That's when I ended up doing the banana only, which is on my IG, which that's actually a really useful tool, because I think I dropped 13 pounds in 14 days, but I actually give you a visual of what the macro breakdown was, and that was consuming, I think it averaged out over the 14 days of 33 bananas a day. I think the carbs came out about 830 something grams, but even protein was still up at about 45 grams. And that'll probably surprise quite a few people. You're getting protein in, you know? And I don't think you need as much protein as people like, I mean, from bodybuilding, you know, we both
Mm-hmm.
come from, you know, and that from that world, the fitness, and it's always minimum of, well, actually, it used to be like 1.5 to 2 grams. in the bodybuilding sphere, it's actually dropped down. People have come more recently, like 1 to 1.25. But if you look, I'm comfortable with saying anyone just to hold and maintain muscle mass, the low end, I'd be comfortable personally going like zero point 0.4 grams per pound, and definitely zero point 0.5 I think is safe. So 200-pound man, 10% body fat, 180 pounds, zero point 0.5, look at 90 grams of protein. That's not to build, but that's enough to hold and sustain, which is what most people are doing when they're trying to lose weight, is just to maintain the lean muscle tissue they've got. Will you titrate that up? Yeah, and I have recommendations for how much when you're going into gaining pace, and that's all in the book. I try and give some guidance or parameters, whatever the scenario is. I do want to mention one thing on that as well when it comes to protein before we go. I know we've already spoke about FGF and AMPK, and 2 to 3 days, I don't think you're really going to lose any muscle mass. When I did keto and low carb, after a period, I found that when I dropped below 100 grams consistently, so like that 80 to 90, I mean, I was carrying a lot more lean muscle then. I was probably like 20 to 30 pounds of lean muscle extra because I was heavily training bodybuilding then. But dude, I was tanked. I could not recover at all. Like I couldn't. And once I bumped it back up, around 105 was about as low as I could get away with. 120 and I was good. But comparing keto to doing a sugar fast, protein levels, this is completely different. You know, so for anyone who is worried, like, take it from me, I've experimented plenty with low protein in different settings, and this is very unique and very different. My recovery is phenomenal at this point. It completely surprised me because I thought it would start to get compromised, but it hasn't.
Yeah, my recovery is enhanced quite a bit as well through doing the sugar diet. What about supplements? You mentioned apple cider vinegar to me, and just like vinegar in general. What are some decent supplements? I know you make some supplements, and I think we should plug those. I think that's worthwhile because you make something that has choline and TUDCA in it, which could potentially be something that could assist and make someone's liver a little bit better, and it might help optimize this protocol.
Yeah, you get bile flow, but the big thing in that is the choline. Most people just sell straight TUDCA, but the choline has been proved to reverse fatty liver disease, NAFLD. So I think that could be of value. Again, I wouldn't have too much going on. Like, yeah, I own a supplement company, but I don't just plug supplements. I'm not a sales guy, and I don't really recommend much, especially in a sugar fast. I want people to get in tune with their body. That's my biggest, that's the biggest win. I wouldn't want to be masking anything. I'd want people to really feel their body and get in tune with it before they start adding anything, to be honest. You know, things that can be beneficial, MOTS-C, the peptide, you know, I think that's beneficial. It's works on the mitochondria as well. And if you see some of these pathways are activated not through protein restriction, but also through mitochondrial stress. So I think that's definitely a benefit. One that I do like is SLUP332, which it's known about now, but it's actually one of my favorites. When I was in a surplus and I was taking that, I found that body fat didn't come on nowhere near as quickly. So it's one that you might want to get maybe Jay on. I think you're friends with Jay, right? Jay Campbell.
Yeah.
And talk about those, or Chase even. I recommend Chase's site in the book. But they're like that, the high level things. Trying to think what else we've got in there.
What about just using like just regular stuff around the house, like apple cider vinegar can help with like blood glucose levels a little bit. It's my understanding.
Yeah, I mean that's the acetic acid. You can get it from any vinegar. So acetic acid is shown to improve blood glucose levels. I've sent you like the Good Morning product out that we have everyone take on a fasted stomach. That's got like 5 grams of glutamine to help with the gut lining, aloe vera, lemon juice, a lot for detoxing, and the apple cider vinegar all in one. A GDA definitely could be of use because you're just going to amplify that effect of activating AMPK, and you're going to help drive any circulating glucose into muscle cells a lot more rapidly. Especially if you're coming from an insulin resistant background, I think that's hugely of huge value for sure. So we've got a product called Matador, and I released that in 2010. We're probably about the only company who recommends like how many grams per capsule because we've got like 15 years data. I've had type 1 diabetics who have been on an insulin pump reduce their exogenous insulin by 50%
Shit.
using that product. I mean, it's one that most companies have got a GDA, but they really struggle to get the same response that they get from ours. So yeah, other than that, Mark, honestly, I think that would probably be it. If you're really worried about essential fatty acids, you can really have a couple. But again, in a sugar fast, I wouldn't. You know, especially if it's your first sugar fast, and you're only doing it and then if you're doing others for a short period, I wouldn't stress about it too much. And that'll probably get clipped and be like, this guy's saying don't take any vitamins and just eat sugar. So let the haters commence, right?
Yeah, well, you're
In,
getting a lot
in
of
context, I'm talking about a sugar fast, guys, short period. All on the other days, you can put all your supplements back in, you know, all your regulars. And then I would really go heavy on the liver detox. So, and maybe have some N-acetylcysteine in there as well. We've got 2 liver products. And we've had people, I actually had a girl message me. Her liver values were up at like 900, 920. 2 weeks later, they were back in normal range. We had a pretty aggressive dosing protocol with those two. So just the main thing is take care of the liver if you're going to do this. And if you're coming from a place with a compromised liver, then maybe this isn't the right approach for you right now. Maybe getting that liver into a healthier state before you put extra stress on it. And same again with medications. And if you're a bodybuilder using orals, I'll probably stay away from a bunch of orals if you're going to do this.
Where can people get your book, Joe?
It's on the Project AD website. That's projectad.me. And then you can annoy me. What is it? Joe.English22. Yeah, you can get me there. We did just put live as well something pretty cool that's launching, AD Medical RX. It's a landing page. Hopefully it'll go live at the end of this month. But that's a subscription website where you pay a fee every month and you have access to up to $9,000 of prescription medications monthly, subsidized by the government. So, I mean, I'm not a big fan of medications. You know, sometimes they're essential, but what I am very cognizant of, there's a lot of people out there who cannot afford maybe even to pay for the medications now because they can get really expensive in the economic climate. So any way you can try and get people into a better state of health, even if it's using conventional medication for a short period, then so be it.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much for your time, and we'll have you back on the show, but we have to have you here in person. So that's what we got to figure out next.
For sure. I will bring candy and a box of chocolate frosted flakes, Mark, for sure.
All right, man.
I want to say thank you to you before we go as well, Mark, because I don't think people quite understand how much time and effort you put in and how many people you talk to and record with. Like the work you do for the industry in really when something like digging deep on these things, like it's a service that I think you're pretty much unmatched with the work ethic and the amount of like content that you put out. And it's always balanced and you're willing to try and test it out. And I think that people should really like respect and appreciate that because there's not many people who are willing to put their own body on the line to try and help other people. You know, there's
Thanks, man. I
not many
appreciate it.
around like that.
Thank you. Have a great rest of your day. Take care.
All right, man. Thank you.